This is Happy Munkey.
This is Happy Munkey.
Happy Munkey. Happy Munkey.
This is Happy Munkey.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Benji Bay, and you could check me at _the Benji Did It on Instagram. And I love Happy Munkey. Have a good day.
Today on the Boulevard, everybody, we got a real special Renaissance, strong boss lady in the building, everybody, all right? What can I say, man? You got everything. You got the smarts. You got the streets. You got everybody watching you, lady. You got corporate watching you. You got everything watching you, girl. You want to add to this intro? You know that. You know how we do.
From another mother. She wears many hats.
Yes, she does.
She is an author. Looking at her book here, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry. She's the CEO of the Weed Head. She is Chief Strategist Officer of M4M, Minorities for Medical Marijuana. She's the co-founder of CSCon Conference. My sister from another mother, Dasheeda Dawson.
Hey. I gotta bring y'all with me some couple places. Get that type of intro.
Absolutely. You should always get that intro when you walk in the door. Somebody should just shout it out for you. You know what I mean? You need that.
Now we need you to fill in and tell people anything that we missed out on and reintroduce yourself and tell everybody on the Boulevard and Happy Munkey World what Dasheeda Dawson does.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Shout out to Happy Munkey. It's my second time on the air in some ways with you guys, but yes, I'm Dasheeda Dawson. I am the Weed Head, and I am a self-proclaimed corporate to cannabis crossover, someone who has, over the last 4 years, really amassed a lot of experience being an industry educator, senior executive for various cannabis operations, and strategy expert for municipalities, cannabis operations, and special interest groups. It has been quite a ride, but I'm Brooklyn born, right? Jersey educated.
New York native.
Yes. So I'm back in New York because honestly, I knew that if this was going to legalize, I didn't want it to be done haphazardly here, and I wanted to make sure I lent my expertise. But yeah, I'm excited to be here with you guys and talk about the book, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry, and what I've been up to the last 4 years and what we're going to be getting into for 2020.
Dasheeda embodies everything that Happy Munkey tries to bring to light. We feel like we're the nexus between corporate and culture, and you are corporate and culture.
That's so dope.
It's hard to have, we get rarely hybrids, but that's our goal for us to bring light to the corporate and the culture. So like that, the corporate learns about the culture in cannabis, the culture learns about the corporate, and we feel like the industry is never going to be fully optimal until they both learn how to find the happy medium. And I think that's the biggest divide in the industry. So it's great to have a hybrid like yourself.
Absolutely.
That straddles both sides of the fence. And we're big feminists here on Happy Munkey. We've been telling you guys that our New York female cannabipreneurs are nothing to play with out here. Let you guys know.
No. We definitely nothing to play with.
And for the cherry on top, you black. Come on.
Oh. You are hilarious. But you're right, yo. You hit the nail on the head with this corporate and culture, because I get a lot of questions that are really like, oh, why would you name yourself the Weed Head? And I'll be real, like, at the door, it wasn't necessarily a decision I was conscious about branding. It was certainly around the digital space. I saw the value value of it from an SEO. I knew that it was searchable. A lot of people use the term, but they're using it with a very negative connotation. Yeah. And after I started penning Under the Weed Head as a blog, I saw that I could take my same ability to rebrand and or start a new brand and apply it to the Weed Head. And I knew that it was going to be, both Princeton and Brooklyn. Like I'm equally from the hood as I am highly educated, right? So the combination, which there's a lot more of us thanks to hip hop generation, thanks to African American women and Hispanic women becoming some of the most educated groups in the country. We're now in this weird, interesting mix where I've definitely made by the culture, so I'm for the culture, but I've had experiences in other spaces and I see how folks operate, and so we have to have that standard also meet the culture as well. But one doesn't have to negate the other. I'm both equally so. I'm also a dude and a diva, real talk. Like, I'm a tomboy, but I'm also a diva. So, like, to me, I've always been like I'm going to do whatever feels comfortable for me. And, like, we'll have to define it, right? And I think this space you're right. It's not going to be fully optimized until we've figured out how to coexist in both. And I've been trying to do that for the last 4 years, for sure.
Yeah, because we feel like the corporate is isolated on their side. They try to buy their way in, and as you know, they failed miserably because all their stocks are down. The culture's on their other side, and they're doing some great things, but they need the funding for the corporate, so nobody gets as much light on that side. So until they don't find the way to both meet together, the whole thing is not going to come to fully fruition, in our humble opinion. That's how we feel.
No, I think you're right on. And my thought is, since I'm a strategist, is like, how do we solve for this problem? I think the solve is very much not rocket science. The middle ground is education or re-education, because the corporate guys are coming in, and I say guys because, to be honest, the last 4 years I've mostly worked, when I think about corporate cannabis operations, with white males. They're coming in really focused on bottom line money, profitability, this idea that it's going to be a quick cash in.
10x, 20x, 30x, 50x.
It's like ridiculous overnight valuations. It's unheard of. But they don't really understand cannabis as a science, like in the medicine behind it. They don't understand that, if you try to rush into adult use without taking the consumer population along, without re-educating people about the fact that this is actually good for you as opposed to what we've been told, which is like the devil's lettuce, like the exact opposite. We got so much unlearning to do and mindset shifts to do. It's
just
like
re-educating everybody.
Everybody.
Even the police department, the locals. Everybody needs some
the dogs need to be re-educated, right? Like they only know how to peep out terpenes, but what happens when you have a great full spectrum CBD product that has terps too, or good hemp flower, which, by the way, has terps also. Like, people, honestly, the common joke that folks have been saying, and I've been telling my people back at home, is like, if you smoking mids and rags, it's probably hemp flower.
So they've been that whole time back in the days, Dasheeda, when we were smoking the rags and the mids, they were selling us hemp.
It's probably hemp flour, because to be honest,
I never thought about that.
Yeah, and here's the thing: I tell every plug too, if you work in a market or you have your model, business network, whatever you want to call it, in a market that has a hemp program, start introducing hemp flower into your assortment. Don't call it regs and mids, though. Make sure you're calling it what it is, which is hemp flower. I mean, there are ways to start to transition your assortment, in my opinion, from that legacy to more legal. But I'm constantly a proponent of it. I feel like I have to be that person that's with the plug, like, and giving them real talk, because I don't want people to keep staying on the outskirts. But that's
a big issue that's going on throughout the country is that they're trying to find a way, which they have to find a way, to bring in people from the legacy markets, because you can't just turn the switch one day and just leave them out. That's not that simple.
No,
you got to find a way to bring them into the fold so they can pay their taxes and they can be part of this the industry that they helped build.
Right. No, I'm glad you're calling it legacy. I've been calling it legacy for some time. I think this, just to clarify for anybody listening, like this is what people been calling the black market, right? Mm-hmm. But instead of that, we're calling it what it is. It's the legacy market, meaning it existed prior, it currently exists, and every single new legal market has had a real issue with taking that demand on that side and getting it transitioning. Mm-hmm. And for dumb reasons that make sense, like the taxes be too high, right? Or the actual supply is like crazy.
And once again, not including the people from the traditional and the legacy markets, and just expecting to switch a switch overnight when people have been dealing with them for 10, 20 years and expect them to just disappear because they turned the switch on. It doesn't work like that.
Agreed. It's definitely been interesting to watch so many fumbles, but I think we learn from mistakes. I'm a business and analytical mind, and it's constantly looking at, yes, you can learn from a win for sure, but honestly, when you're looking at your L's, you're going to probably get more information out of it. And so I see it as we look at all these markets and we're seeing where they're having struggle, and rather than use it as a way to kind of constantly talk down to the cannabis industry, because I'm not trying to do that either. It's more like, here are ways to optimize and fix and not go back down that path. Because we keep repeating the same mistakes, We just saw Illinois open, for example. Imagine being a medical patient in Illinois, and on November of 2019, you go in, and it's like, you can get what you can get, but it's not too much of a line, the person. And then, boom, January, you go in for your next re-up, and now you're waiting online around the corner, and they may not have any product for you now. Mm-hmm. So that's how it impacted the medical market that already existed. And even though people think that all the money is in adult use, I keep saying again, if people know it's good for them,
glitters is not gold.
They would probably shop it differently as adult use. One, and yes, it's not a money rush. Y'all remember that product ingredient acai berry in the 1990s, the 2000s?
It was a fad. It was a thing.
Yes, but imagine it came to market and it didn't have anything negative on it. It wasn't called the devil's lettuce, but the minute people knew it was good for them, it was in everything, and then it could be a markup on the pricing. It would change your sales. That's what cannabis is going to do. We're seeing it happen with CBD, which is why they call it but really the whole plant can do that.
There's 22, 23 cannabinoids left that they haven't even tapped into.
At least, right? At a minimum, And so I'm just like, wow, if we knew, more people knew it was good for you and it was better for you, imagine when they can actually choose it as an adult, they would buy it differently. Now we still still treating it like it's a sin, and you're paying all the sin tax on it.
Sin tax.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. I haven't heard that term.
New York is like, they're not as bad as Illinois, but New York is pretty bad on the sin tax. You want to smoke cigarettes here, you're going to pay for that tax, for that. You want to get sugar here and some other states, you're going to pay for that. So they give you, basically, they're trying to prevent you from wanting to do it by having this high tax on it. And in this case, we're actually entering the market with that mindset already. Not that they want to prevent, they want us to shop it with the high taxes and basically say, oh, you want to do something that's a little bit questionable, you're going to have to pay a little bit of a premium to do so. And why would I give up my relationship I got with my plug for 10, 15, maybe even 20 years to go have that experience? No.
Absolutely not.
So we're clear.
And you got to pay more.
So we're clear. So Weedhead is just you, or is that like a company? Elaborate on that.
Yeah, so back to what I do. So the Weedhead and Company is a company. And the and company really is the remainder of my team from MJM Strategy, which happens to be family. I work with my sisters, Imani Dawson.
Shout out my sisters and my homies.
Yes, Ice Dawson, Vita Dawson, and as well as David Kelman. That's the core team.
The Dawson family is very resourceful, ladies and gentlemen.
We are. My mom definitely taught us how to capitalize on our strengths, and we're utilizing them in the space. But we were the core team for the MJM Strategy consulting firm. But we had other people also. We had, I think at one point I had about 15 employees, and they were all over the country to make sure we're supporting our projects. But over time, what I've learned is that while I love learning and being a consultant,
so that was the goal of it. Is Weedhead is a consulting company for the cannabis industry.
Initially, no. MJM Strategy was the consulting firm. The Weedhead was just a content play. So it was just I'm blogging about it, or whenever I want to show up, I got a little something and it's me. Yeah. But now we're the Weedhead and Company, and we're a publishing company. We published my book, and as well as all of the content that we've created, like the recent article that I did. I get more time now to really write under the Weedhead, and the rest of the company helps support that. We have a book tour, for example, going on right now, sharing success in cannabis, and that's all being planned and operated and executed by the N Company and the team.
So we want to touch base on, you just drifted by it, but you're the author and publisher, I didn't know that part, of How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry for Professional Contractors and Entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Break down the thought process and why you felt this was needed for the community and the people.
Wow. Well, you know, the reality is that becoming the weed head meant getting more influence and seeing more stories come through my DMs. And I was really starting to see a lot of the same questions come through, like, how do I get in? And I want to figure out how to do a dispensary and so on and so forth. Even some of the basic questions that were around advocacy. So I really wanted to create a book. This is a workbook. It has 100 self-assessment questions. So you do the questions as you work through the book. Intended to take anyone, whatever your skill set, whatever your capabilities are, and really give you a very good analysis and breakdown of the industry with real science as the basis, so I could dispel some myths in there, but real business strategies, meaning I'm talking about each sector of the industry with clear understanding of these are the common mistakes made in this area. These are some of the opportunities that are for the future. And then there are questions that give you a little bit more real talk that you got to ask yourself, meaning, do I have the skills? Do I have the capabilities right now? What can I do right now? So many people have these credentials. I mean, like, oh God, so many lawyers, for example, usually lawyers, who are like, yeah, I can't wait to be in the cannabis industry. I'm like, well, what are you going to do? And they're like, oh, I want to start an edibles line. And I'm like, wait a minute, how about just being an attorney or a lawyer in the industry first? Like, the fact of the matter is everybody thinks they have to reinvent themselves to get in, because maybe in the first gen, second gen of pioneers, that was what was happening. We're seeing that with some of the fall of the big companies. Like, you don't really know how to operate a company, we can tell, right?
Men lie, Dasheeda. Women lie, but numbers don't lie.
Yeah. So, but we're like 5th or 6th wave of pioneers now. We don't need to reinvent ourselves. We need people that you really have that skill set, or you have that credential, which is slightly different. Then we need to apply it, because that's what's going to legitimize the industry, and especially people of color, because the route to dispensary or touching the plant has so many barriers for us. Whereas utilizing the skill or whatever my day job is and trying to figure out what it applies to in the cannabis space provides just an easier route, and probably a path that not a lot of people are looking at either. You get less competition, which means that you can do more testing, and you can probably even fail a few times and iterate and learn without everybody on your back or on your neck. These companies are failing because they were the first ones through the door. They came in very bravado, thinking they knew, oh, it's just weed, everybody's gonna come through. Yeah, that didn't happen.
And then back to the whole dream we said earlier, Dasheeda. Mr. Investor, 10, 20, 30x overnight.
Exactly. Who came up with these things? That I would be fired from Target. I would have been fired from these big companies. Like, what
crazy,
girl, where'd you come up with that? So this is real analysis of the industry with real talk. The book is really meant for anyone who wants to transition. And since I'm a patient first, I really take it seriously what I consume and how I consume it. As far as cannabis is concerned, it's good for people who want to be conscious consumers too. Especially one of the chapters I love and I really geeked out on was the processing and manufacturing, because so many people like to dab and they like their vape pens and they like edibles. Well, I broke down it in a very scientific way so that people know what terms we're using. I've heard so many confusions around like resin and rosin and, you know, and when I look at the folks from the legacy market, that's where I want them to start meeting more of like the corporate, the culture meet the corporate. Re-educate yourself on the real terms and don't be afraid to flex them. Some people feel like, oh, that's gentrification. No, it's science. It's science. You could still call it weed. You could still call it trees. You could still call it whatever you want, but it's still cannabis. Yeah. And here's some of the scientific principles we learned.
And, you know, give FYI, some of the people out there, the better you sound and know your stuff, the easier it is to sell it.
Yes.
Another sales tip. I'm not gonna give you guys too many Wall Street tips. The game is to be sold, not to be told. I'm not gonna tell you guys everything, but she's giving you a blueprint on not only for you to have your self-knowledge, but also to be able to upsell things, because the more knowledgeable you are, the better you are at dispensing them.
You hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Well, Dasheeda, I want to thank you personally for, you know, creating this book, and you made it very affordable. You told me $20, correct?
Yes, $19.99.
So like that, you know what I mean? Because you with your education and your corporate and your Princeton, instead of, you know, it's easy for somebody to take that and run with it and go corporate and forget about the less fortunate, but you're providing ways for everybody to participate, from the book to the list you made, which was 65 of the most influential minority cannabis entrepreneurs or something like that, correct?
Yeah, so we wanted to highlight Black and Hispanic or Black and Latinx men specifically. I was doing research for this book, and I'm gonna be honest, I just found like that was a struggle. Even though it was a struggle globally for women too, it was even more so for Black and Hispanic men. And I started to see that the narrative was basically telling us, and this is what media does, it kind of pushes you towards the thought process. And if you read what we had or what I saw, it basically said in order to be in the industry legally, you had to be a professional player of some sort or a rapper, entertainer. That's basically if you're Black and Hispanic. Yeah. Otherwise, if you're not, you're doing it and you're a thug. And for me, this was a list of like, no, we are a rainbow spectrum of the people doing different things. Not all of us, you know, dispensary, not all of us. Exactly. So I enjoyed making the list. It was one of my favorite things because now I know people on site. Even though I knew you guys before, I really got to research, and I got to also figure out there's a lot of brothers that are not doing their due diligence to get themselves searchable on the internet and having a bio and, you know, even an image and just pulling some of those things together. But I look back and I'm happy I did it. I wish I should have done 100, but I thought, okay, this is going to be scrolling for a while. And it was luckily picked up by Benzinga and then Yahoo Finance. So a lot more light got shown on it. Millions of people got to see it. And I think that next year we'll do the annual thing. We will make it 100. Nice. And but it was tough.
Nice. How many people hit you up afterwards that you ain't put them in? Like, yo, what's up, man?
We talked about that on She Blaze.
But at the end of the day, it's just that, like I said, you know what I mean? The bigger picture is that you are shedding light on, minorities, helping them understand that this industry is very accessible to them, helping them get educated on it. We got to give you a round of applause for doing this, because this is what the biggest issue is, that people lack the security and the education to feel like they can belong, that they can participate. So by you illuminating these two things, it helps so many people feel like I can be a part of this also.
That was the point, and I'm appreciative of you guys kind of shouting me out. It was a tough to see that we have so many people doing stuff, but we don't have the right media attention on it. And so I'm always excited to see what y'all are doing, because y'all have. And I'm like, well, what is up with Happy Munkey for 2020? You know me, I'm always like in the business, so I'm like, let's get in the business. But what do you guys have planned for 2020?
Oh man, so much. We just started a creative agency, now we're doing product launches, curating events for corporate companies, also doing our own events. And we also are helping companies with branding. We are also going to start doing small concert series, which we have one coming up soon in the near future. Yes. We are basically, stepping on to bigger stages and getting more intricate and sort of the same lane where we started at, but just to bigger stages and higher levels, because we feel like, we did our due diligence and we already kind of conquered where we started at, and it's time to move on to bigger stages because we feel like we're capable.
No, I think that's awesome. Yeah, especially given that you have such a strong positioning in the industry. My company, we're bi-coastal, so we're out in Vegas is where our base is, and so it was dope that you guys are
Shout out
there.
to my homie
Vegas, man.
She works with you guys. Nicole.
Oh, yes.
Shout out to her. She was so amazing, so hospitable to us. She said that, you spoke highly of us.
Yes, absolutely. Gosh, no. You're part of the Canna fam for sure. And it's a small fam. Like, it's like one of those things where I'm looking real closely at what people are standing for. Are they advocating and educating while building their business? Because you can do. It's not mutually exclusive. You can do it together and it can be strategic. And so, that's what y'all been doing. And I'm just proud to be affiliated.
It's an honor. The feeling is mutual. So we got to tell people, because you like to skip over things, and me and Ramon don't like that. The people need to know that there's people from our communities that reach these levels. Can you tell us a little bit about where you started at and your education and everything, so people can see where you can start and where you can finish? We aspire to inspire here on the Boulevard, Dasheeda.
Okay, well, so I'm originally from East New York. I grew up on Hendrick Street between New Lassa and Hagerman. Shout out to East New York. Thankfully, has not been renamed.
For those people that you guys don't know out there in the rest of the country, that is Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, New York. I'm from Brooklyn. I got told on the last podcast that I say that too much, but the reality is I say it so people know how to approach me and how to handle me from the door. I'm old school Brooklyn. I ain't like the new school Brooklyn. Right? Like, it's a whole different Brooklyn right now.
It's a warning.
It is a warning. I guess not. Right? Nah. But no,
people need to know about your journey, Dasheeda.
They do. I mean, it's different. It's what makes me who I am, and it makes everyone who they are. So I'm proud of my journey, but I went to a prep school out in the Upper East Side, and I played ball. I played basketball. I was an all-city basketball player here in the city. And the year I graduated, Lamar Odom, for example, was the player of the year, so we old.
You grown.
Nah, but so I really didn't use cannabis either, but I had a lot of homeboys. Like, I'm, tomboy, play ball. You just know everybody.
Hanging out with the fellas.
Right? You're playing, and they look out for you because you're almost like a little bit of a gem around the hood. Oh, she crossed over so-and-so last week. So now they're like, don't mess with her, kind of thing. But I also had 3 sisters, 2 of whom grew up in the same time frame. And my mom was an educator, and everybody knew who she was. They knew who my grandma was. So although the hood was the hood, we were pretty...
Everybody know, don't play with those girls. Those are such and such daughters, mama. Love, don't play no games. She will pop out on the block and make a scene. Don't play with her.
But you know how it is also in the hood, man. You take care of those that want to do good. People miss, they look at the hood like it's all crime. Nah, if
there's
you're on
morals,
the right
principles, and values.
The block is... they supporting
especially
your
old
whole
New York.
journey.
Yes,
yeah,
old New York for sure. Yeah. It was definitely tribe, right?
Yeah, the homies are supporting your journey for sure.
I'm definitely a product of the tribe. And so, after prep school, I left New York. And honestly, I haven't lived in New York since I was 17. And so that's how ingrained that experience is. And when you're growing up and running the streets, like I've basically been running the streets since I was 9 on my own. So that time period, though very short, so crucial to who I am and how I maneuver, because I had to maneuver in the biggest city, the busiest city, and probably some people think some of the most dangerous parts of the country during that time. And I made it out. I survived. I was able to take a lot of adverse situations and make them into my advantage. Because just because I had to do more, it meant that the next time when everybody else is complaining or feeling a little bit stuck, I'm like, this ain't really that hard compared to the last thing I was in. So it just over time made me a lot stronger. But after that, I went to Princeton University, which is right across in Jersey.
Oh, come on. From the hood to Princeton, baby. That is something to be proud of, you know?
Thank you.
And it can also show all the people that are in the underprivileged communities that anything is possible if you put your mind to it, you know?
I agree. And I want to make sure also I dispel any myths. Like, I wasn't there to play ball. Like, that's not why I got there. I got there because of academics and, you know, at the end of the day, I went hard with the academics. I majored in molecular biology. And so I am technically a molecular biologist, even though that's not like, I don't wear that sign all the time. But that means I really do love the plant.
Right.
And
that
I
means,
understand.
Science for real.
Yes, science for real. These cannabinoids are molecules. And so they're my friends. And I'm a nerd in that way. But then I went out to the real world. I worked for about 10 years before going to Rutgers to get my MBA. And then after I got my MBA, I knew I wanted to do fashion and beauty. And that's what I did for corporations like Target and Victoria's Secret, Full Beauty. These were really large businesses that had they were during tough times, right? Like in the multicultural hair space for a long time, Black Hispanic women didn't really like having the natural hair, right? Mm-hmm. We were all perming our stuff. And now like over 85% actually have natural. And that all happened in a 10-year time period. And I was lucky to be a part of that.
The companies had trouble transitioning.
They did, because they didn't know how to talk and they didn't know how to re-educate that community. It's like some of this with my success in cannabis is like, it's not because I'm like a rocket scientist, it's because I've been in other industries where we had to do that re-education.
Just giving them the one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you teach people how to take care of their hair and what beautiful the new paradigm looks like under a real lens, I think they treat it differently. And once you get an experience of what this is like as a patient and how it really helps you, whether it's topical or you're smoking it or you're doing whatever, you treat it different. And so it's a parallel. I worked in the plus size industry, same shit. Like, excuse my language, but most women do not know what body type they have. And it's even worse when you start to gain weight post baby, for example, and you exacerbate that body type. How you shop for your clothes determines how well you feel about yourself at the end of the day. So we had to teach plus size women that they were fabulous no matter what size one, and then this is how you best shop for your clothes to make you feel like you're fabulous. It's the same concepts over and over again, and I feel like I've been applying them to the cannabis space. But those are the big things that I got to work on in corporate America, big mindset shifts. And I'm proud of it. Cause
listen, man, I'm over here awe-inspired, man. We throw around that term Renaissance woman loosely, but this is the true definition of a Renaissance woman. This woman does it all.
That's crazy, man.
You are hilarious.
So throw all that
on.
Let me
step my game up.
And all those good stuff and all that stuff that you did. I'm going to give you a little simple question that we tell everybody here at Happy Monkey. When was the first time you got high?
Oh, that's my favorite story.
There we go.
Because I was old compared to a lot of people. But the first time I ever consumed cannabis was, I was a 19-year-old me. So we're talking about 21 years ago. Gosh. 22.
I ain't ask you to get that information.
Yes, but I it's important. Like, listen, it's my birthday time period. I just turned 41, so I'm like, turn up.
I thought you were 31. Whatever you're doing is working.
Thank you.
Black don't crack.
Listen, that melanin is strong and it's helpful. But yeah, 19, and I did it with with a boyfriend at the time, and he was a consumer like every day. And I didn't get it because I was an athlete, and it just was one of those things where I'm not gonna judge you, because again, I'm from the hood, used to smelling it, don't mean you're a bad person. I got that, right? But it's not for me, and that was the general perspective. But he took me out to Washington Square Park. He rolled a fat blunt. At the time, I was like all cool with that. I don't smoke blunts and paper anymore. But yeah, no, basically we just smoked out in the park, and I was cool there.
What was it? Was it a Philly, a Dutch, a White Owl?
Gosh, you're asking me details that I didn't even know the aspects then. To be honest, I don't know. It looked like a blunt. Yeah. That's about as much as I can remember. And I didn't take a lot of pulls before I was like, yo, this is what is going on. The experience turned bad only because we decided to get on the train, and I was paranoid. Like the police were gonna come and get me. It was like a whole nother level.
Smell like weed and shit.
Yep. And all of that. And I was like retarded, asking questions and just crazy. Just a mess.
So after that, when did you become, like we like to call it, a frequent flyer, getting higher on a regular basis?
2000, I want to say 2012 probably. Before then, it was if we on vacation, you may see me take a hit. Maybe, but it ain't my thing. I still was drinking primarily. But when we moved to Minnesota, it was like negative 25-degree weather. Yes, I was there for Target. So I had to abstain to take my test to get, make sure I got my job right. My mom was in chemo. She was there at the Mayo Clinic. She used cannabis all my life that I could remember. Like, house always smelled like it. So didn't think anything about that. She was using it here and it was clearly helpful for her. And I was struggling. All my ailments, the autoimmune issues that I was having, it was like peaking out early, but it really went in full-fledged in that weather. And the stuff that I suffered from, even like arthritis, just turned times 10. I would wake up like really, really sluggish and very, very stiff, painfully stiff. And she was just like, you need to smoke weed, girl. Like, she was basically like, come smoke a joint with your mama. And I did. And you know what? I felt better. But of course, I didn't feel immediately like, okay, this is exactly perfect. Right. The scientist in me started to experiment on myself, but I'm also getting it from the legacy market. So at the time, medical marijuana wasn't legal yet in Minnesota, and I'm getting it from a plug to a plug because I'm trying to keep my corporate positions, like all these different things and hoops that are making it a real struggle. But I finally locked in with somebody who was also a Target employee, and his dad unfortunately had lung cancer, and so we both had a real reason to get quite amount, large amounts, so we would go in together to get it, essentially. But yeah, we needed it like sugar. We started using cannabis in the house more than the sugar after I realized it worked for me, because I knew at the very least I needed it every day to go to sleep, just to put my brain down, right? And I suffered from insomnia, autoimmune issues, early signs of MS, and all of that in 2012 started to come to a head, and I was like, I need to figure out something.
Did cannabis offset all these things?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say it made me even more of a bomb executive. Like, nothing really suffered in terms of my performance. I think I outperformed a lot of expectations while at Target.
That's good so people, have this depiction of like the lazy stoner. And me and Ramon always like to say, we're here in New York where everybody has to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jobs, and nobody that smokes weed sees slacking on anything. You know what I mean? So all those depictions that people have, like lazy stoners, I don't really know many of those.
Me neither. But that's also why I became the weed head, because I was like, if y'all really think the weed heads in general are lazy, then y'all gonna see me, meet me, hear me speak, and I'm going to flip that on the head, because I'm even more so functional now. One, I'm not in pain, and if you're in pain, like that's even something that you get used to is still a distraction, and it's a constant thing you worry about or stress about. Whether it's because you stomping it with your heels in your fashionable job, right? And I was, and not realizing you're putting a lot more pressure on these joints, and they're already in pain. I was a lot better and a lot more calmer and anxiety free because I was using cannabis. I slept better. Instead of having insomnia, I was able to go to sleep and then perform how I was supposed to perform. I think we should start talking more about how cannabis helps people become their best self, especially if they are conscious users.
Yes, I like
period.
that.
I like that. So I want to get into another role you have, because you have so many hats here. We can go on forever and ever. You being the CSO of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, what would you say that organization brings value to like minorities, and how does it help them, so that people can know? Because I know people hear the term, but maybe you can give them a little more insight on how and what they do to help people around the country.
No, thank you so much for shouting out Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Shout out to Roz McCarthy.
That's my homie right there.
CEO. She's everybody home. She's my big sis in the industry. Cool. But yes, the organization is a national organization, 501c3, that is really dedicated to outreach, education, and advocacy, particularly around cannabis legalization for medicinal use and as well as adult use, but understanding that health and wellness within disadvantaged communities. So the term minorities really applies definitely to Black and Latinx communities, but there are a lot of minorities in the room when the board is all white, male, right? Like there's also women missing. Oftentimes there are vets missing. There's actually disabled missing more often than you know. And we're all of the vulnerable communities that actually need cannabis for medical usage. And so there's often just this big miss on advocating to those groups specifically or educating those groups specifically. And so Minorities for Medical Marijuana since 2016 has basically been state by state going in and working on a political level as well as a community level to get more people from these communities involved. And right now is, I believe, the largest network in the world probably of people of color, definitely Black and Hispanics that are interested and or already working in cannabis, either as an advocate or as an entrepreneur or as an employee.
So that's why I asked the question, because I know a lot of that. But the people out there in Happy Munkey world, you need to understand that there are many organizations, many platforms, many people like Dasheeda that are willing to help you navigate through this industry, but you gotta meet them halfway and show up and sign up and do your due diligence, because there are people that want to help you. You just gotta seek it.
Yeah, no, you could go to m4mmunited.org, and that's 4 as in the number 4, but that's m4mmunited.org for more information. It's also m4mmunited on all of the various platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's a great organization. We now have chapter presidents in nearly 30 states, I believe, and that means we're represented in all of the, at least, medical markets, and that's important. We are holding boot camps regularly that help people with licensing. The next one coming up in Chicago. The people in the boot camp actually get my book, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry, as part of it as well. So even though we're teaching people that how to prepare for licensing when it's coming up, because that's a big hole right now, that part, it's like sometimes be 50, 70 pages to submit for the license. I mean, let alone the money, right? Like, say you solve that, and it's like, who's putting this together? So teaching people how to put their teams together, how to put that together, and then my component of the boot camp is always around what are the ancillary opportunities? What are the things that will say you don't get the license, because in many cases you won't, right? What will you do to sustain your business in cannabis? What is the other opportunity? And that's where the book comes into play. Wow. But yeah, we're one of the few. We're changing legislature in Florida right now. You know, in order to be licensed, you have to show a diversity plan, and all of that language came directly from the M4MM board and leadership team. So it's happening in New York as well. The goal here is to get as many people involved, and you do have to meet us halfway, because we're going to provide pamphlets and flyers and events, but at the end of the day, one thing I struggle with is seeing the same person over and over again, and there's no progress, right? They're still like, oh, well, I'm still trying to figure out and, see what happens. No. We've all kind of started to move regardless.
Me and Ramon always tell people, because people come ask us for advice all the time. We always tell people, everybody on the planet has ideas that is amazing. You have to meet it with execution. True. Yeah. There's no wrong way to do it. The faster you do it, the faster you figure it out. Yep. You're waiting for the perfect plan and the perfect time, and they both don't exist, in my opinion.
No, you're right. Nothing to say to that other than truth, facts.
Now, I want to know, what I don't know about is your latest venture called Cease Conference. That I don't know about, and I'm interested in knowing, since you come up with these ventures like they're
how do
just like just like another day in the park. You just pick up companies and.
Oh my goodness, no. I just feel like I'm a problem solver, and sometimes your solution becomes a business, right? Or a business idea or a product idea, So Oklahoma, believe it or not, was where Cease was born. It was actually born in 2017. And it came from a necessity of the fact that there was no formal education that happened. And honestly, I get tired, even though I speak at conferences all the time, it's very B2B. We're talking to each other. We're talking to other business people. And that's great.
And it's usually the usual suspects.
Yes, the usual suspects.
We already all know
it's
each
still,
other.
It's, yes, definitely among the minority community, we know each other, right? Like, but it is usual suspects. But it's still B2B. And I felt like it was really a time necessary for us to start talking to the community, the consumer. And so Cease was born out of a necessity in Oklahoma to do that in order to help them pass their medical marijuana bill. And it did pass. We partnered with municipalities as well as a black woman, Senator Connie Johnson. She was the mother of the marijuana movement out in Oklahoma. But it gave me the idea that we needed to do this in every city, really. Since then, it's grown. My sister Imani Dawson is the executive director of Cease. It's a 501c3, so it's a nonprofit. And we've done education in a lot of different cities, working closely with municipalities. We're actually going to be up at the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus Weekend in this month in February for New York State, and we're going to be, Cease has a panel there. We're going to be talking to legislators.
We just funny you say that. We just had some of the Happy Monkey team up in Albany today for Lobby Day.
Yes, it was.
And that's another one that we preach about, that everybody has their grievances as their complaints, but everybody doesn't like to get on that bus and go up there, because you can tell Dasheeda, Vlad, and Ramon all you want, but we don't have that much power. The people that do are up there, and you go up there and they have to listen to you.
Absolutely. But we need bodies in the seats, right? Yeah. We need it in order for them to hear it. Unfortunately, they think we're just talking about ourselves or each other or whatever, but the more people that they see that it's impacting, the more they have no choice but to be compelled into action, one way or another. But we're hoping the way that we need it to be. I mean, I'm concerned. I don't know. We ain't talked about it yet, but I'm really curious about what y'all think about the governor's
you can't get ahead of me. I was just about to ask you the same thing. We're the interviewers here, Dasheeda.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Come on, let's go.
We feel like it's gonna happen soon, and we feel like, at least I feel that they have been taking a lot of lessons from all the other states, and New York being New York, they want to try their best to get it right. So I think that they've been doing their due diligence on all the mistakes, and whether they do or they don't, I think they're trying to get it right. What do you think, Ramon?
It's New York, right? Whatever. We always trying to get something right. But nobody kind of starts off right? So hopefully they try. I mean, I don't know, man. It's difficult, man. I don't really know how to judge this situation, but I guess the faster they start with some sort of I don't know. I guess with this bill is a start, I guess. You know what I mean? And that's what we need as a start usually. You know what I mean? No matter how it comes. And we don't really get to dictate how it comes from the back seat. So hopefully, once the shit comes, they need to start involving us a lot. Like the culture a lot. Way much more.
They don't acknowledge the culture yet enough. The governor's office doesn't acknowledge the fact that the legacy market is a real supply and demand. It has real economics.
And I don't think it's just New York. I think it's all over the country. They don't.
But that's the one. Like, I agree with you. I think that generally the intention is there. I support the Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes and Senator Liz Kruger and the MRTA. But even as I, talk to supportive legislators, I am re-educating them, or not re-educating them. I'm illuminating the fact that there are real economics that needs to be dealt with on the legacy side. We cannot just say, well, those are all criminals, and so it's obsolete. No, it's not. They have real consumers. There's money being exchanged here. This is a whole economy that we're trying to actually bring to tax, basically just trying to bring it into taxation.
Yeah.
And what they want to do is pretend that economy doesn't exist. And even by doing so, they're pretending those consumers don't exist. They're essentially wanting to say, hey, all those people breaking the law, we got to just pretend it's not there. And I definitely think that that's a disservice. We need to utilize that information to learn about why it works so well in New York. Why is New York a $2 billion plus per year?
Highest consuming city in the world.
Why? If you figure that why out, you'll apply it appropriately to the legal market and you have a much better chance. That's where I'm like, I'm not a rocket scientist, but that's the whole. Every time you talk to somebody in government, period, it's like this hard discussion about people because they're primarily not right? Like they're primarily Black and Hispanics, right? Mm-hmm. And then two, they're technically on paper for all this time, they may have been criminals, right? Mm-hmm. If we agree first that we shouldn't have criminalized it, then we should take out number two. Mm-hmm. And if we agree that when we criminalized it, we not only saw that everybody had possession and usage the same rates across all races, but it was biasly implemented, biasly executed how we would criminalize it, then we should agree that we should, with bias, undo that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that means looking at the same groups that experience the bias. Mm-hmm. But it's like, if you don't want to admit those 2 points, then you're going to have a difficult time playing chess with me anyway on the way I'm thinking about how this works.
How about these apples, the shit? I'm interested in hear your opinion on it. Mm-hmm. You don't even have medical flower currently. How are you going to turn the switch on to the biggest consuming state in the world and be able to supply them overnight?
You hit the nail on the head. That is a Rubik's Cube that cannot be solved. Right. I've been talking about it for 2 years, and I've been saying the same thing. And now, guess what? If you didn't believe me, you have Illinois as an example that just happened. They was running out in like 3 to 5 days.
And that's a small population compared to New York.
And they actually had flour.
And they had flour.
Right? They are offering flour now. New York offers flour in a very small way in these little capsules. So we have some RSOs that are starting to cultivate, but nowhere near the scale. I have some suggestions. I actually feel people need to be really looking at what's going on with hemp in New York. They have a very strong program, and now they're, I guess, reopening the licenses so you can come through that path. It's a much cheaper pathway. I think it's like $500 for a hemp license. They're going to probably be more scrutinizing, but I really feel like, because it's cannabis, then there should be some, if you're going to grandfather in these medical folks, right, then probably the hemp folks might need to be also looked at with that ability. So that's a solve number one. But maybe, and this seems like, again, not rocket science, maybe slow your roll on the adult use side. You can't agree on all the details anyway. Like, you still trying to not give us reinvestment into the communities that we don't have to, like, it's not rocket science for us to figure out which ones it was. You're not ready. So let's make the medical program as good as we can be.
And that's it.
We only got, 100,000 patients?
Yeah.
Arizona has 200,000 patients. Michigan had over 300,000 patients.
City has 10 million people.
Exactly. And how many people using already? Exactly.
But you got to remember, it's the whole state.
Yeah.
So that's just New York City.
Right.
And you got 100,000. That's ridiculous.
Yes.
Those 100,000 ain't going the dispensary only has concentrates and like.
That's why she made a good point. Like, just make a good, fully optimal medical industry before you try to let the volcano erupt.
With the wreck,
and you're not gonna be able to catch the lava.
No, you're not. It's that's a very good analogy. I mean, I'm worried, honestly, that there's not enough people advising the governor's team in this way. He knows where to find me. I'm the WeHead, WeHead.com. So to me, I feel like I can actually visualize and write out strategically a framework that would work. It doesn't mean that adult use can't still get passed. It just means that we, of all the states, are going to do what was not done ever. Even in California, even though this passed medically in 96, there are still over 60% of the municipalities there opted out. That tells me that not enough people really understand that it's good for you. They don't understand that it's medicine. Because all those people are okay with liquor stores and having no issue with alcohol and Napa Valley and all of the likes. But we're still opting out of having a like a cannabis store? No. It means you didn't understand and you didn't learn it. And they had 20 years to get it done and they didn't. In this case, we have organizations that I just became a part of. I'm now a new board member for Doctors for Cannabis Regulation. I think we need more partnerships with those type of organizations that include real health professionals that are going to help usher in the industry. And again, not with the pharma lens, but more so like what's the patient need and fulfilling that population. Get some insurance on the books too, even if it's test case. People would love to use New York as a test market, right? So that then when you finally bring in adult use, you can have dispensaries set up like a CVS where it's like, oh, you're a medical patient, you go with a pharmacy version, go in the back. You have a card exchange, you maybe have some insurance. It's going to be subsidized in some way. You may even have assortment that's set aside specifically for you so you never run out. And then if you want to shop the rest of the store, you can. But right now, I just don't understand how we're going to get more people to really want to shop the adult use market if we don't have enough product. And the current product right now and pricing is terrible.
Crazy.
It's terrible. Like bad. And that's why they trying to like control the region. He ain't slick. He's like, okay. And I like Cuomo. I think he's smart. And he's like, oh, we're going to do a summit. Let's do a governor summit of all of the states. Because he knows if New York doesn't get this right, you could just go right to Massachusetts from some places, Connecticut from others, New Jersey and Pennsylvania from another. So you got 4 states already figuring out a little bit faster. At this point, I'd rather be a medical patient in Connecticut, which I was at some point, just to get the flower and the assortment that they have, than I would in New York. It's also cheaper to do, and the process is so much more straightforward. Cuomo needs to do what he does best. Let's make a campaign about it. Let's get New York smart about cannabis. He can, boast having the most patients ever.
Exactly.
And we will be probably the most supported. I don't know. It doesn't seem like rocket science, but I think people are so much in a rush to get to what they think is this money in adult use.
And from the experience of every other market, not too many people are profiting that are involved in adult use. People don't know that, everything that glitters is not gold. Everybody's, just rushing because it just sounds good. But like we said, numbers don't lie. All the people that own all the dispensaries on the rec markets, they don't look like they're breaking in the bank.
No. And they spent a lot of money. Last year was reported that MedMen lost almost $100 million, and a lot of it is probably on their, extra about it, marketing campaigns and things like that. The design and layout of some of these dispensaries, they basically look like an Apple store. It's expensive. Some of these don't qualify under 280E for usual and customary expenses you can write off as a business. And the market itself, the consumers never shifted. So if you don't got anybody in your doors and it's crickets, and you don't know how to get people in your doors, even though I know how you could get somebody in your doors. Imagine if you had one of the plugs that was actually your distribution
once
network.
Again, the culture and the corporate have to find a happy medium, or they're both never going to reach their full potential.
Yes. Speaking of which, the plug also need to recognize where they fit into the supply chain, because a lot of times people think the plug is the grower or the cultivator, and that's not quite it. That person is usually the distribution. They have a network of potential consumers.
Yeah, because the grower is a whole different planet.
Yes,
like the people who grow are like on straight just agriculture. Don't talk to them about all this other shit that you want to talk about, selling and all that other stuff. Don't talk to them about that stuff. Talk to them about the THC, the strain that they, like they all about the flower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's a whole different planet. The distribution part's a whole different another planet.
Yeah.
Retail's a whole different
Retail's a whole different, you know what I mean? So it's like you just said, there's a separation in all, you know what I mean? So the plug got to figure out, where do I fit in and all this other shit, you know what I mean?
But it's just like I said, until that communication doesn't happen between both sides, then they're both not going to be able to figure it out and fully optimize in either side,
You're right. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, primarily so the people who are the plug can figure out from looking at the different sectors where do I belong. If you're the person who has already been throwing parties and so you're the plug because you've been throwing parties, then maybe you are in more the event space or event marketing space. So, there's opportunity there. many ways, right? Because you actually understand how a good consumption event should be. Some of these corporate guys, they think you just throw a couple dab rigs and like, oh, we throw a dab bar. I'm like, if I hear that one more time, a dab bar, you know, and I'm like, that's not gonna solve your fact that this don't really got like no flavor, don't have no life, and it's not a real event without that. So there's a couple different ways that you can get in, and you're not always gonna be the cultivator just because you're the plug. You're not also going to always be the distributor because you're the plug. There's so many different ways. So the book is for that. And as far as the corporate side, I think is about the same thing that I'm tasking the governor's office with. Admit that the legacy market exists. Admit that that consumer has real demands and has certain behaviors that already exist, and stop trying to fit it into the stereotype of behaviors, right? Stop assuming that, oh, everybody is going to be in the couch or needing a munchie or whatever situation it is. Like, that's all assumptions. We don't know what
all those wives' tales and myths they have.
And they build consumer strategy based on it, and it's like, doesn't make sense. Stop also trying to force the consumer to choose your brand. So I just have to, call out a little bit of like shade on the current operators in New York. It's like, yo, you writing a 29-page memo to the governor asking them not to support home grow because you think that making the law in a place that, to force people to have to go to your store is going to make them your favorite consumers. That never works in any market. People gotta earn that brand loyalty in the same way you earn brand trial. You usually gotta pay for it. If you want acquisitions, you gotta pay for it somehow. If you want to keep them, you're paying for it somehow. In this case, I feel like more and more, not just in New York, that move or that stunt has worked in other places where the big companies who own the market, they basically corner the consumers into this space where they have no choice but to use their brand. That is not really American capitalism as I know it. Where's the competition without that?
And it's not sustainable.
And here's what, because there's already a legacy market, and I don't got to deal with that if I don't want to. You know what I mean? If you're telling me, oh, I only get $80 little tiny half-gram nasty vapes, guess what?
No.
I'm going to go keep getting my flower from this person.
Good. Yep.
It's not rocket. Like,
No,
again,
no.
it's a mess. But
No.
I got to be real. I keep it real. I mean, I'm trying to be nice about it to some degree, but I do think it's important.
But you know what it is though, that and I think some of them are open to it. It's just like, this is helping because you never know, some of them might listen because they're not all educated on the whole thing either.
Yeah,
politicians, they're not all educated. They don't all know all the things that you just spoke about. So it takes somebody that can speak their language like you to relay and help them understand, because some of them don't.
This is true, and it's a catch-22. Like, I like it, but then I also realize that it gets tiring to say the same thing, and I realize some of the politicians or legislators don't want to have that mindset shift. You actually have to open your mind to changing around what you think. For example, in the current proposed law in New York, they're talking about limiting how much you buy to an ounce. Again, I go back to, I'm a consumer marketing expert. I think about consumer behavior. There's a reason why Sam's Club and Costco exist. If we think of this like an ingredient or sugar, who is not buying in some sort of bulk where you can keep it and preserve it? I use Jim Jones a lot as a joke because we were on the panel together at some point for Source, and he was like, yo, I have an ounce a day that I'm using. Does that mean that man have to go to the dispensary every day to make sure that he has enough for what he needs? That doesn't make
Shout
any
out to
sense.
Jim Jones. He's a good friend too.
Right? Like, it doesn't make sense. No consumer will want that experience, and we're already boxing the consumer into behaviors that we already don't do. People buy in bulk for convenience. At the end of the day, they don't want, not because they want to go and sell it, resell it. I'm not buying all this sugar because I'm like, oh, and here's a baggie for you and a baggie for you. The minute we take that mindset off and we look at it again as a commoditized product, we start to fit better into way consumers shop. And then there's there's some of us who's like, yo, I'm not going to be able to keep all of that flour fresh. I'm going to buy in smaller amounts. It depends on the person. But we're not even giving people an option because we're so afraid, and we've made it still a sin. So it's like, oh, if you want more than an ounce, then I got to be questioning what you're doing with it. Do you even know what an ounce is what I ask. Have you looked at the difference between, what it looks like? And honestly, if you even knew what flour could be done with besides smoking, you would realize that an ounce is not really a lot. Once you decarbed it and ground it up, and like you can use it for multiple things. It just is sad, but at the same time, I think I'm getting through, but I get frustrated because it's such basic science and basic math and weights, and we got all this crazy stuff.
You know the old saying, Dasheeda, common sense isn't too common.
It's like, well, listen, I don't know any other way to say it, but these are the mistakes we're making, even in New York. After knowing that we have such a big market, you're going to make these assumptions that are like supposed to guard the consumer. You think you're doing it for their safety, not realizing we grown already. Yeah. We've been doing this already.
We've been doing this.
Right? People,
the plug been getting me for the last 10 years. It's been the same person, and it goes to for the same Midtown that live in Midtown, the same person who live in Queens. You got the same person on the block for the same so we've been trusting the black market all this time, and we getting it cheaper from them. Why would we go to you? Well, don't, especially New York, because we don't like to get boxed in anyway. So you fucked up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
and
it's like,
and now you got new rules on how we could do it. And I don't know. I'm not a fan, and I don't think it's gonna work. I think we have to accept that there are real consumers here, and real consumer behavior must be, accounted for. Period. Yeah.
Well, Dasheeda, it's time for the $1 million question. We ask every guest that's ever been on the boulevard, and we're interested to hear your take since, you're so knowledgeable. If you had to describe Happy Munkey, everything you know about it, the movement, the brand, the space, everything you know, in one word, what would it be and why?
I think two words came to mind, but I think revolutionary is one.
Okay.
And
why?
Because nobody is doing what you're doing in a meaningful way, right? Like, and I mean cross states, right? So a lot of people got concepts and they're doing it locally, and you guys have really started to take this where culture meets corporate globally, and that's a revolutionary concept because it's always been separated, and I don't think it has to be. I also think that being conscious consumers and having safe spaces to do so is also revolutionary as well. In my opinion, I feel like the event space in the legal market still is it's not upscale. It still struggles with being able to meet my needs as the age I am and what I would expect. And that's something I think y'all have already started to transform. Period.
Oh man, that was I'm humbled to hear that, man. You make us blush, man. Thank you so much for always believing in us and for those kind words, Dasheeda, because people like you, against all odds, help us know that we're on the right path to greatness and doing what's right, not just for us but for the people.
Yes. Well, congratulations, y'all are definitely pioneering in the industry. I'm so proud of you guys and proud to know you as well.
The feeling is mutual.
Absolutely, the feeling is mutual, young lady.
So, before we go, you gotta let people know anything you want them to know, how to contact you, anything upcoming,
your Instagram, all your good
all
stuff.
the plugs that you have, darling.
Okay, here I go. Get myself ready.
Yeah, let's go.
First and foremost, you can find me by Googling or going to theweedhead.com. You're going to find the Weedhead and Company, and that is where you'll get more information about my book, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry, which is only $19.99. It's available on Amazon Amazon, as well as my website in the ebook form and in print. And I'm a co-host on She Blaze, which is a weekly podcast that I do with my baby sister Ice, the cannabis socialite. And basically you can find us every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Facebook Live, but you can find us anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. And last but not least, I just got to give a quick shout out. All year long, I am hosting or holding a Cannabis Wealth Challenge. Basically, I have a class that's a monthly class. It's only 3 weeks and is one of those intensive classes where you have a lecture with me every week and the book comes in free. I'm giving that away for free to 1,000 entrepreneurs, and I'm announcing 100 every month starting in March. So you can go to theweedhead.com/cannabis wealth challenge. Again, that's theweedhead.com/cannabis wealth challenge. And you can enter. It's very easy. It's just telling your cannabis story and your business idea. But we believe that if we can help 1,000 entrepreneurs reach their first 100K earned in the industry, we know for a fact, just do the math, that is $100 million of revenue that my company has helped to support being built in this industry. This isn't $1 million idea or get rich quick scheme. This book, my course, though, however, is a good entry point, and you can get started with at least getting 100K in the industry if you follow a plan.
It's giving people a fishing rod. You teaching them how to fish. Go fish, bro. Straight
and realistically and practical, instead of you getting sold 10, 20x overnight, which is much better and realistic, because we all know nothing great of magnitude and scale this happens overnight. Neither were the pyramids or Rome, and neither will anything in this industry.
That's so true.
So this was definitely a pleasure to have the queen in the building. You know what I'm saying? Miss Dasheeda, thank you for bringing yourself here and giving us some jewels from all aspects of life.
Thank you for
and
having
science me. And streets and books and all the good shit. One more round of applause for the queen, Mr. Ralph. What's going on?
Yeah, Dasheeda, I want to thank you, first of all, for always believing in us from the beginning, even when we first got in this industry, for inspiring and motivating, people of color like us that, it's possible for all of us, and for being, like I said, not just talking it, but walking it, being a living example that no matter where you come from, what circumstances, what race, you can make it to any level and wear all the hats that you do. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here and to call you a friend and an ally. Thank you.
Thank you. Woo woo.
So, everybody out there on the boulevard in Happy Munkey World, till the next episode. Peace, love, happiness, and remember, everybody out there, you're too blessed to be stressed. Just light a joint. Everything's going to be okay. Till the next episode.
Peace.
What's good, everybody? This is your nigga Ralph, trying to keep you fresh with the info from Happy Munkey every single podcast. You already know what it is. If you haven't followed us yet, follow us on Instagram at HappyMunkey_ or Happy Munkey Goodies. Now remember, that's monkey with a U. Also, if you haven't checked us out, we're on YouTube. So check out our channel, Happy Munkey TV. Keep us current, live, and everything with the culture.